S&P inclusion, FOMO from the institutions. How do you justify this $32 run? Let's start with Arnie.
So you want to start with easy questions, right?
Yes, all the easy questions.
Well, is it justified? Let's try to ask the opposite question. Why shouldn't be justified? Do you see any big reason why it shouldn't be? Because what is really happening right now is the world is discovering what we have been talking about for many years now, that Palantir is not only it's a nice company, it could be literally a revolutionary company in the hottest segment of the market. And hottest doesn't only mean, it deserves a high multiple. It means that there is the potential to have a business tailwind that is not only strong, but can also last many, many years, given the condition that Palantir actually delivers value into this trend. And since we are obsessively following each small step, we can be sure that, this shit works. So is it justified? Well, when you have a very strong movement very fast, you always ask yourself, but isn't it too much, too fast? And it could be. But personally, I think we are just entering now in the phase where we can say, now the stock is hot. On my side, this is not a price I would be happy to pay. I'm happy to pay prices like last week. It was literally last week where we started at minus 15. And so for me is no, do nothing. If something crazy happens, I'm happy to reduce, but I'm more in this is the moment to let it go.
Okay. Vince, your thoughts on this $32 run?
Well, I have this feeling that the stock is like a little bit expensive, but it's so interesting because I recalled it that we were all on Rocket Lab Weekly when the stock was at $15, and we felt the same way. And then the stock went to $20, and then we felt the same way. I remember we had this big panel and talking about who could be buying at $20, and we were all agreeing that it's like it's not good to buy here, but we're not selling, And then we went to 25, and then we were stuck there a little bit, and then we went to 32. And I mean, as Arnie alluded to, there's just no reason to sell. The thesis is intact. The company is going to be growing in the future. So I think even if you're buying here, the worst thing that can happen is that the stock goes sideways, or you have to wait a little bit. But if you're buying for the long term, you are just going to be fine. And I think the stock will just keep on going, and it will keep on feeling expensive all the time.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that as well. I mean, the expensive thing we've been saying, every time it gets to 15, 20, 25, it feels expensive because like traditionally PE, price to sales, you could argue it's expensive, but it seems like the street feels Palantir can grow into that expensiveness. Amir, how do you feel about $32?
I didn't know we hit $32, so that's great.
Of course, because you just don't look at it. You're a saint. You don't look at anything ever.
No, but $32. I mean, intrinsic value is around $31 for me currently, so it makes sense that it's trading around here. And the fog of war in terms of operational results has gotten really short, like what would help us project future periods. And as for the average investor that does not value businesses, I think that they may be waking up to the government segment, actually, like our friend Dan Ives has been touting for a while now. On a sum of the part basis, I think people may have discounted the government too much. I mean, in my evaluations, I have them growing still being the majority of the revenue by 2033. And I think people are realizing that there's a lot of performance to be expected from government, and severely above what people may have expected. So yeah, I'm not too surprised to see it trade here. I don't think it's going to drop drastically from here. Could it go up? Sure, why not? But for each passing quarter, I think I mentioned this on last week's stream, that I've noticed that by every earnings, when every earnings comes around, Palantir is roughly trading around new higher intrinsic value. So it makes sense that it's here. I'm not too surprised. And by next quarter, I expect to raise my intrinsic value again, and it should be a lot higher again.
Matt, your thoughts on $32 for Palantir?
For sure. I mean, I think it's warranted. I think where we're at though is kind of a price discovery mode where we're trying to understand what the top of the current range might be. I mean, we're always going through kind of a peak and trough of 10% minus 10% of, a range bound sort of piece. And I think what we're trying to do, and I think what we have seen over the past 2-3 days, is it jump up close to 32 or close to 31, and it comes back down a little bit, and then it tries to find, a new range of buyers to see if it's really the top of this potential range that it's going to be bound in, I would say, until we have some new catalyst. I think some people brought up some good pieces in the chat, right? What is the next catalyst? Is it going to be the S&P 500 inclusion? Are we going to have a continued 27, 28% year-over-year growth comparable to what we saw in 2Q? And I think, where we're at here is just testing the top end of that range, right? Is there a spike to $34? Maybe on a big contract announcement or something like that. But what I think we're doing right now is really trying to find the normal range for the next 2 to 3 months until we get to a place where we have another big catalyst. So, I'm feeling pretty confident that what I'm going to write up for the article is going to be probably a range bound between 27.50 and 32.50. That's kind of where I'm feeling is going to be very comfortable for Palantir over the next few quarters. But we'll see. I mean, there's always catalysts that can make it seem inexpensive. And I think what's really happening is the continued acknowledgement that Palantir is a doer in this organization, in this world. Sorry. And I think everybody else has kind of been faking it till they make it. And I think the shoreline is kind of coming out, and a lot of people are being exposed for what they can and can't actually do. And people are recognizing the true capability of Palantir and what they can accomplish comparatively to some of the other products on the market that I think people, because of their ineducation or lack of education, or because of their inexperience in this particular piece of computing and AI as well, think that something like a Snowflake or think that something like a Databricks is comparable, when in reality it's not.
Okay, so who do you think is actually buying Palantir right now? Because we know Palantir has been quite a very retail stock, but this price action is very strong. So someone is buying and buying aggressively. Who is this buyer?
I don't necessarily think it's more people buying. I think it's less people selling, right? And so I think that the shares are becoming more scarce, right? I think people were just trying to originally hold the stock as some sort of meme or some sort of profit, and now I think people are starting to understand that this is going to be more than $100 billion company. This is going to be something that goes to 250, potentially 500 billion, or maybe even $1 trillion. And so it's knocking out the people that were looking at it from a short-term focus. And there's always going to be that person that jumps in and jumps out. But what I think you're starting to acknowledge more is more mainstream presence and people holding on to the stock rather than, it reached another $10 or something in the stock price, I'm going to sell it, right? I mean, none of us have sold, except for Arnie back when it was at $18. But that's a different story for a different day.
I think it's implied that everyone is purchasing Palantir right now. I don't think it's like retail. I don't think it's institutional. I think everyone is coming around to Palantir, and it's also evident by the short interest being extremely low, despite the stock price hitting 52 weeks highs, and at a very, very fast clip. Like usually that would be accompanied by someone shorting it, like historically, if you look at short interest. So I think a lot of people are coming around to Palantir. I don't think it's a specific group, and I think that people will dedicate their academic careers to understanding how Palantir is reaccelerating and proving haters wrong.
Where did you get that line from? That's interesting. Dedicating their academic careers. Interesting. S&P 500 inclusion. A, do we think it's happening? B, do we think the run is because of the anticipation of it happening? C, how important is it to get in on September 6th versus in 2025? Arnie, what's your take on this?
Well, entering the S&P 500, I think it is more a thing that matters for us to shareholders because we have been dreaming this so much for a long time since we started having like 4 quarters of gap earnings. We are here. Come on, let's get in. Come on, let's get in. And now many quarters have passed. I think 7, 8. So it's like a lot now. Now, does it really change anything for the company? Not really operationally, but it does affect the visibility that the company could get. So there is some business value to be unlocked because when they present themselves to a potential customer, it's like, oh, we are not that meme unprofitable trash consulting company that people describe us with. We are a pristine S&P 500. So we belong to the cluster of the biggest and most important 500 institutions in the US, while also being crazy profitable, while accelerating growth. So that already puts clients in a mind of, oh, these guys are actually serious. Now, for shareholders, this would mean if we get accepted finally, probably a big jump short term, like it happened essentially for Airbnb, Blackstone, more recently Supermicro computers. So it's like typically when you have the announcement, you have some more price action, people buying because, oh, if Palantir will enter the S&P 500, I need to buy it before it actually enters so that I can front run the institutions that will have to buy. Now, does it really change the dynamic of the story? I think not really, but we need to think one thing always when we deal with Palantir right now. A few months ago, I described something like the AI hype can become real. And what I mean with that is what previously was not affecting Palantir when Palantir became popular as a meme. That was, oh, you're popular, but you can't transform that audience into business value, into money for the company. But now Palantir has the way to capture a high interest. So whatever additional positive feedback loop of information creates further feedback loop for the business. So that becomes like free marketing. So if Palantir keeps doing well and it gets the recognitions that it deserves, that becomes a free marketing for the company. Once you have free marketing for the company, you can grow more, you can expand margins more, and reiterating. And like it or not, we are a small part of this engine that helps amplify the stuff Palantir does. So a butterfly effect coming.
Vince, what are your thoughts on S&P potential inclusion?
Well, again, it's so interesting to look back at history that maybe a year ago we were all like, okay, what's the catalyst for Palantir? What does Palantir stock need to continue to rally? And it seems like all Palantir stock needed to rally was Palantir. And they have been like, it's so nice that the stock is rallying because the company is doing good, and it's not rallying because S&P 500 inclusion or interest rate cuts or whatever. Like, we're actually going up because we deserve to be going up. So to be honest, I don't care anymore if we're included. Like, it's going to happen sooner or later, but we are up 96% or something year over year without S&P 500. And sure, we get a little bit of bump, but the stock price is mainly driven by what it actually should be driven by, which is the company performance. And I'm very happy with that.
Amir, your thoughts on S&P 500 and if it matters or it doesn't, like Vince said?
Last rebalancing, I think a lot of people were expecting to see Palantir join in on the S&P 500, but that's when we just hit 4 quarters of operational profitability. I mean, we have now 5 quarters of operational profitability and 6 quarters of net profitability. So I understand that we weren't included the last time if the criteria is 4 quarters. I don't know what the criteria is, what the board looks at when they decide who's included, who isn't. But I also try to look at the implications in terms of inflows by being included in the S&P 500. And let me tell you, it's a real rabbit hole to try to calculate what it would do for the enterprise value of the company just being included. And after a few hours, I came to the realization that it doesn't really matter besides serving as a short-term catalyst for the stock price. And over time, the stock will trade in line with intrinsic value with or without inclusion. So I decided to just not care about it. So I'm more in line with Vince there.
Yeah, I agree. If the stock was struggling, then like that would be a catalyst. But it's very hard if the stock's up 90% year to date to feel like we need to get into the S&P 500. I'm sure it would create more stability from an institutional side, but it's not like it's super, super exciting. Matt, any thoughts on S&P 500?
Yeah, I think everyone hit some pretty good topics there. I think the thing that I didn't hear though was I think it's going to help provide a floor and really reduce the volatility from a downside perspective. Like things like the massive drop that we kind of saw for no reason, going from like, what was it, 26 or 27 all the way down to 21. I mean, granted, the rest of the market dropped 8-10%, but I mean, that was like a 30-35% drop in a matter of a couple days, and it just didn't make sense. So I think with it being more aligned with the S&P 500 and being included in the S&P 500, I think it'll remove some of that alpha to the downside and would really help folks with a longer term time horizon that are, I guess, a little bit more skittish. And I think it will open it up to a new range of investors. I think there's a lot of folks out there that are fearful of investing in companies that aren't necessarily in the S&P 500. They look for that stability. They look for companies that have been profitable for 4 quarters, and it might not come up on their radar unless it's actually inclusive of the S&P 500. And so included in the S&P 500, I mean. So I think that's just something that would help from, I guess, transitioning us from what many folks have probably called a meme stock back in 2021 to a company now that's actually demonstrating its value and growing its presence, not only just in the tech space, but also the future potentially for AI. And then lastly, can be considered something like a staple in the S&P 500. I think that would allow us to see a new segment of investor that we have yet really to tap into.
Do you think that if the inclusion happens, that would trigger a lot of comparison between Palantir and the existing big techs, meaning that there would be more discussion of, can this company actually become one of another behemoth?
I think that's what's already happening, and I think that's why we're starting to see kind of a floor in the price.
Amir, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that if they were to be included today, they would be in the top 150 by weighting, which would mean around like 0.11, 0.12% weighting. And if you then consider all the $1 trillion that has like if you distribute the total amount of money that's divided across all the different S&P 500 indices, like if you just take 0.12% of that, like it would mean a lot of inflows. But even though you consider that, it would make like X amount of billions to Palantir's market cap. But it's not like every company in the S&P below the top 150 is like overvalued by X amount of billions. So what I mean is, when I started doing these calculations about the inflows, the rebalancing and all that stuff, I came to the conclusion that, well, it's not like these companies have a premium just because they're in the S&P 500. Like it reverts to the intrinsic value regardless. So short term, they will see some inflows, but I don't think it does a lot for valuation wise over like a period after like a year. I think it all normalizes.
Consider companies like Airbnb, Tesla don't really gain any business momentum more from entering in the index or not. I think for Palantir, you can have better credentials just by presenting yourself as, by the way, we are one of the top 150 companies belonging in the best index in the world. But I mentioned Airbnb and Tesla because those are two cases where we entered in the S&P 500. Yeah! And now they're both down. in the case of Tesla, very down. So it could be that potentially also the opposite could happen, where when you make the comparison between, what Palantir is actually trading with in terms of multiples compared with the overall index, there could even happen the opposite direction, that maybe we have like a spike for the, new money coming in, and then CFA's analysts say, you know what? No. Compared with Microsoft, it's too expensive. Compared with all the other, Salesforce, ServiceNow, this company is too expensive. So it's a risk worth keeping in mind.
That actually segues into the next topic that I wanted to talk about, which is really interesting because essentially what you guys just said is, what does the S&P 500 do for the overall stock price valuation and the attention it gets? Which gets us into this conversation. I made a video about this earlier in the week, but the media attention on Palantir. So I think all of us that have been covering the stock for the better part of 3 years now are starting to see mainstream media pick up the name a little bit more. YouTubers and independent outlets start to make more content about Palantir, and people on Twitter, which is I would say the best place on the internet to get like sort of a sense of social understandings for finance, start to talk a lot more about Palantir as well. So the question here is, in the next 5 years, so when we're on Palantir Weekly number like 1000 on August 16th, 2029 from here, do we think the Bloombergs, CNBCs, Wall Street Journals, etc., are covering Palantir so much that at least every week you have headlines, either in articles, videos, podcasts, etc., from those big media networks? And what do you think that does to the share price? What do you think that does for the overall perception of the company? Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing? Do they kind of weaponize it and go against them like they did with Tesla? Or do you think they build them up and introduce them to more and more investors every single day that get excited to get allocation to Palantir? Let's start with Vince on this one. How do you think the media will compound interest for Palantir?
I mean, I think overall the media lately has been a net positive for the stock. Somehow with the AI wave, like Palantir used to be a black box, Trump supporting, evil company that Ross hated, and we really turned around. Like, first of all, now it doesn't feel like it's controversial anymore to like support Trump. And I think Palantir has been really rebranded with the AI wave, and now they are like this darling of the AI age, and it's pretty much Palantir is like this unicorn company, like the only company that is really making money profitably from AI. I mean, I think it's going to be also a net positive, because they will continue to talk about Palantir a lot more, and then a lot more, moms and pops and everyday investor are going to tune in and find out about Palantir, and yeah.
I agree, dude. When you mentioned Ross, I forgot. I legit forgot about Ross Gerber. Ross,
I have to ask. Arnie had a video with a compilation. What happened to that video? I tried finding it to send it to someone like a month or two ago, and I couldn't find it. Did you delete that? Did you get threatened by Gerber Kawasaki Asset Management?
I got
or by his jail company.
Yes. No, I got threatened by YouTube because essentially I needed to remove all the stuff that I didn't actively created. So a compilation of someone else, even if it is very well, very heavily and well edited, is not really accepted by YouTube. So in order to preserve my monetization, I needed to. So
I happen to know about a platform that would probably allow you to upload it there and leave it there. Do you know of such a platform, Arnie?
Yeah, we're
perhaps run by Elon Musk.
Yeah, but that is already there.
Is it
there?
Oh,
yeah. Can we pull it up? Can we watch it, Arnie?
That platform is not searchable.
Search sucks, but everyone needs to see this compilation. And remember, I was helping Arnie compile this like 2 years ago or like a year and a half ago, and Arnie didn't even include like 40% of the clips. Like there's a lot more of clips.
Well, so hold on. while Arnie's looking for that, because Elon
Um,
hasn't fixed Twitter, it's going to take him a couple minutes to find it. So for those that don't know Ross Gerber, he's this dude that bet on Tesla early, and that's how he kind of made his name for himself. But for those that are new to Palantir, he called Palantir, he said they were the equivalent of Nazi Germany. So this is a video that I did, Arnie, while you're waiting for your thing.
Look at private chat.
This is a 34-minute breakdown back in January 2022. I'll put the link if anyone wants to watch it. And Dave Lee had to actually take this down because what he said was so crazy, but I caught it before Dave Lee took it down. This is what our boy said. At least is one of the things that he said.
What they called.
Yeah, I have a beard in this video. It's a little old, but here you go.
I think it's part of Arnie's link.
Gandalf over here.
It will be
I mean, it's
there.
a private
You
chat.
found it, Arnie? Did you find it?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, let's just play that because you have everything else. Oh, it's on Twitter? Okay, perfect. Here we go. All right, so this is the compilation of all the things. It's a 5-minute video. Okay, so sit back and relax. This is
And
the type
it's
of media
missing
coverage.
like 5 more minutes. Let me tell you.
I mean,
This is
it was
Arnie-
hard to compress because there was like so much material, but 5 minutes is okay to digest. 10 minutes, but that would have made people throw away. So
this is the type of media coverage Palantir was getting in 2022, and this is why, it's very different from where it was back then.
Is one of the most evil people. Just look at it. Just look at this guy. Alex Karp is one of the most evil people. Just look at him. Just look at this guy. He looks like the devil.
I support American strength, but I do not think we should be outsourcing our CIA activities to a private company. Now, I don't want to go into it any more than that because they attacked me, and they attacked me viciously again after my last comment. Okay, but that's the way this world works. If you want to know some shit that you don't really want to know, so I can't talk about it. I literally just can't talk about it. It's just not worth putting my family at risk. So wow.
So Palantir might say that, hey, they don't really, hold the data or sell the data. They're just servicing their clients, the government's own and collect the data, hypothetically.
Isn't that what the German soldiers said when they were burning people? that Hitler, they were just doing a job. They had no idea that they were burning humans.
So,
I think it is literally the worst company in the world. Like ethically, have certain moralities like tracking everything Americans do and selling that to the highest bidder, even if they're enemies of America. Now, Palantir and the president of Palantir is basically the for-profit CIA. That's what Palantir is. So over the last 10 years, and it was kind of founded through the Mercer family and the whole misinformation campaigns that brought Trump into power. So Palantir's roots are in tracking all of our digital histories, making profiles. So they have a profile of every American. So they have your profile and everything you do, and they track everything you do digitally, and they do it through nefarious means. And then they take these things and they sell them to companies and governments and foreign spying institutions. And there are no ethical boundaries at Palantir who they will and won't sell information to. So to me, they make Facebook, which I hate, look like Boy Scouts. Russians only understand strength. They don't care about negotiation.
God doesn't know about security at
What they need to
Palantir
do
at
is
all.
put fucking CIA in there and put the Palantir people in and start fucking whacking them.
Okay, let me explain to you. They gather data on people and they sell it to third parties. How much can they grow when they only back supposedly U.S. allies? And I just don't understand the business. Companies buy data from them, and I don't know. I don't. Companies buy data from Palantir. Isn't that what they do? They gather online profiles on everybody. Palantir
It's
isn't
that's what
saving anybody.
Facebook
I don't
is.
see
It's not fucking
Palantir saving Ukraine right now, are they? What are they doing? So yeah, I can hire Palantir to do profiles on all my clients and stuff like that. I don't want to talk about Palantir. I have no interest in that business.
Let me give you an example. You live in Bulgaria, and the Bulgarian Secret Service hires Palantir to do an analysis of social media in their country. And what they want to do is they want to figure out who's reading the most articles that are against the Bulgarian government. So they get this third-party data. Oh, who exactly is going to keep the Bulgarian government? Now, if you know how they treat people in Bulgaria who don't follow what the government says, it's horrendous human rights abuses going on right now. Okay, Palantir would have no problem selling them this data. Where's the accountability? Who are cashing out on you, who don't give a fuck about you at all, you know? Like, if you think they care about shareholders, you're smoking serious weed, okay? But I can tell you the weed companies care about shareholders, and that is where I'm going to make 10x. They're full of crap. If a CIA guy tells you something and you just think that's true, you're listening to the fucking worst people in the world. You think that what they're telling you is true?
Yeah.
Okay, that is not the way the world works.
Yeah.
That's not the way the world works.
Yeah. Would you rather have a closed government, that does all this data, surveillance
do that.
on their own versus, more of an open
Well,
system?
they all do that, and then they have Palantir to supplement all their data. But nobody's paying Palantir the big dollars that they're getting paid because the data is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So that's why they make the money.
Yeah.
Because they know more.
Well, Palantir also argue that it's not they're not bringing the data; they're bringing the analysis, the AI kind of analysis.
Right. Like these are the specific people you need to jail if you want to stop dissent. So they just give you the full analysis of where your problems are. Trust me, companies do this too, and they hire. I'm sure Facebook hires Palantir to go through all their Slack messages to see who the problem employees are. And then they pull up all the data on the problem employees and the demos, and they're like, "Oh, we won't hire people from Seattle anymore," or whatever. The way it works, man.
Got it.
The world isn't so nice.
I mean, I think Palantir first. They don't go to. They're not servicing any country that's not aligned with, let's say, the U.S. or Western countries.
How do we know?
That this is part of their mission.
And so what he does is he spends his day figuring out how to track your TikTok so that he knows everything about you, and then he sells it to anybody. So it is the most un-ESG company you could own if you care about ethics or our society or the basic rot, the tech rot of the stealing of our data to sell not only to consumer companies, but foreign governments, many of which are enemies of our country.
There is not an opportunity for us to buy Palantir. I'm sorry, I can't do it. Hey, listen, I'm all for it. You want to own Palantir, that's fine. I hope you make money.
That was a nice little trip in memory lane. So that gives you a perspective of how the media coverage was back in 2022, and things have changed. Amir, what's your raw reaction to that?
I was part of tracking those clips, and there's a lot more. And I think people miss this because that specific part was sped up. But he actually said to Meet Kevin that after he spoke negatively about Palantir, that he and his family got threatened by Palantir. So he can't talk about it anymore. Like, did they send Chad over there to rough him up or something? Like, what?
Yeah. Did he pass early on, like 2006 Palantir? Like that? Yeah. And they didn't have the opportunity to invest. And so he's trying to burn it to the ground because, I don't know.
Could be. But in terms of Ross Gerber, just quickly, he used to do, like, some of those clips were from his monthly shareholder letter. So he launched his own ETF, like it's the ticker is GK. He used to do a monthly, like, review of his holdings. And after 9 months of constant underperformance, it became like bi-monthly. And then after a few months of that as well, he just stopped doing these monthly recaps of his holdings because all his holdings are down in the trash can. Anyway, as you mentioned, people have been tracking... for people who have been tracking the company for a long time, the shift in media narrative, it's like night and day. Even though I don't believe that Palantir is currently viewed in a particularly positive light as a darling of the market or something like that, I believe that it's being reported on neutrally now. And that's a huge step up compared to the constant hit pieces that we used to see just a year or two ago, and even worse prior to that. So yeah, I mean, it's like night and day.
I don't necessarily know if no offense to you, Amir, but literally something as simple as looking at the Peter Thiel discussion on Joe Rogan today. If you scrolled underneath and you looked at the comments, it was massively attacking Palantir.
Really?
Believe it or not. Yeah, and maybe it's an opportunity to pull it up and actually look at it live here. I mean, it was very much like,
let's watch.
It was, yeah, I watched all. No, I only watched the first 20 minutes, but during the conversation, I was scrolling through the comment section, and a lot of it was like Palantir is a front for the CIA, and a lot of the same things that Gerber was talking about, right? How they're literally trying to destroy the West, and you had all these things. It's like these people don't know anything about Palantir. And kind of going back to the video, it was very funny. So appreciate you guys putting that together. I forgot about all those funny Gerber clips. But like something as simple as going back to the security piece of data within Palantir, and I don't think that this is something gets told enough. And I've talked about this on the pod before, but and Chad, I'm sure will correct me if I misspeak here. But I remember a new engineer started at UDoc, and obviously we have a lot of profiles that people have, and people get access to profiles. But I can't randomly now. I have access to a lot of things. I work in a part of the business that gets, I do a cross region portfolio management. So it's a little bit different. But back when I was specifically Gulf of Mexico, all I could see was Gulf of Mexico data. I couldn't see stuff that was going on in Indonesia. I couldn't see stuff that was going on in the North Sea. So in order to be, moved to those, you need somebody to give you access to those particular pieces of data. Another thing, somebody joined the company, like, I don't understand why I need to make a profile. This is BS. Can't there be some sort of public profile that we could just hire that anybody can access? So we don't necessarily, and Palantir's like, that's the exact opposite reason of why you hired us, right? Like you hired us so that way you could secure the data and have access to the appropriate people rather than just having a generic account that anybody can access and hack into and then steal your proprietary data, right? So
the literal opposite of what Gerber
exactly. I know that this person was going back and forth with this person from Palantir for 5 minutes, being like, "We're not creating a generic account. Like that's just against our policy. Like if you want, we can create you your own personal account, and you can log into it and get verified through Microsoft and everything like that, 2-factor authentication, just like normal people when you log into your Palantir instance." And so it's pretty funny the fact that he was talking pretty much basically what Facebook has been doing since 2008, which is selling people's data. But that's a different story for a different day. But yeah, I was no offense to you, Amir, but I was very surprised. I thought we were kind of turning the corner with respect to the hate upon Palantir as an organization. And to go back to your original thought that you had earlier, Amit, which is like, what do you want to see the media cover for Palantir in the next 5 years? This country has been so divided, meaning the United States, and to be very frank, also Europe and the United States relationship as well, has been so fractured over the past 20 years that I would just love an opportunity to gain some of that pride that we had within, the great work that we had done since the fall of the wall of globalization, right? And I feel like we're taking steps back over the past 3 to 4 years since this pandemic kind of occurred, of relationships really deteriorating, relationships between Russia and the US, between US and China, between even independently NATO countries. I think it's just continuing to deteriorate. So for me, maybe not necessarily what I think is going to happen, but I wish happens, is that Palantir gives an opportunity for us to reunite and gives us that group and say, hey, we should all be working together as one team rather than trying to focus specifically on our own country's interests. Yes, your own country's interests are extremely important, but for the greater good of humanity, for the greater good of the world, we need to play together, and together we'll be able to succeed more, we'll be able to create more, we'll be able to have a much better cohesive world, rather than what I feel like we've been going over for the past 2 to 3 years, which is deglobalization of all these different countries.
Just to clarify, when I say that I feel that the media narrative is neutral, I haven't seen anything out of proportion in terms of Palantir, and what individuals comment on a YouTube video, I mean, that's always going to be skewed I think either way. But in terms of media narrative, I think it's pretty neutral now for Palantir compared to the past.
Yeah, because the Vice media articles were the ones that really went viral in 2017, and that was media. Now you've got, Palantir bullets, and you've got other stuff that shows up in the search results versus Vice media. Arnie, what was your take on revisiting memory lane with Ross?
Is a very fresh reminder that when I feel sad, when I feel I can't make it, then I need to remember that there are people giving money to this guy, and actually a lot of money. Like this guy manages, along with his partners, 2 billion. So if this guy which has the capability, the analytical capability of a monkey. Actually, I think can gather and manage to
Pulling
billion.
no punches today, Arnie.
Analytical capability of a monkey.
Of a Gerber.
I think Arnie is generous here, but yes.
Arnie, do you remember at the time when we saw those pop up? Like, what were your emotions when he originally said those comments?
When these articles were coming
No,
out.
when you saw Ross say that Palantir was Nazi Germany in January of 2022, because it was New Year's Eve. The Dave Lee podcast came out. I remember all of us started watching it, and it was kind of crazy. And then Dave Lee took it down, but he didn't request me to take it down, so I was able to keep that part of it. But what did you feel during that time?
Well, I think him speaking that represented exactly what I wanted to see as an investor. When you have a lot of uninformed people with very strong opinions, wrong opinions, that is where you can bet very aggressively. That's something you also see firsthand with Robinhood. The situation was similar. Like all the press, all the comments, all the experts in fintech or whatever were like, oh, this company is not really that interesting. And then boom, but when you can actually assess that all that noise is actually not only noise, but is also bullshit, that is where you have the opportunity to strike as an investor. Because then, as usual, when the reality emerges, then the stock rises, and when the stock rises, then the narrative changes. So imagine how stupid would look like now an article writing on, but Palantir and the SPACs. It's like, are you really pointing to that? Remember De Palma? Like De Palma now looks like an idiot pointing at SPACs, which are like 1-2% of the revenues, as an issue for for the company. So now the stock is strong, the business is exceptionally strong. Also, the narrative on the stock can change, and that can also help understanding what's going on behind the company. So I would not be surprised if now that there is obviously high interest in terms of business, there is high interest in terms of the stock, like both the stock, the business, there would be more media coverage trying to understand, okay, how the hell Palantir went from being a meme stock, a trash, unprofitable SaaS, to whoa, wait a second, this could be a generational opportunity. So I think now everybody would be interested in to know more. And for instance, also the fact that I was asked to write a guest article into one of the leading SaaS newsletter, for me is a sign, there are people that are realizing that we are not just a bunch of degenerates. These degenerates were actually right into their sector, by the way. Like none of us is a SaaS expert, but we got the intuition right, which to me is even more valuable.
Agreed. Vince, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Arnie. It's just really funny that when we were buying Palantir in the 60s and the 80s, like that was the majority. That's what the majority of people were thinking. And yes, there is still a lot of haters, but it's amazing to look back at this. And we were like the idiots for thinking that Palantir was a real company, and it was a good company, and it was actually like a net positive for society, and they're going to, make everybody more productive. And yeah.
So my experience with this was really interesting, right? So this comes out in 2021, I think on New Year's Eve, like right before 2022. And I'm watching it, and I remember hearing him say, Palantir is equivalent to Nazi Germany. And I hear that, and I'm like, whenever someone does a Nazi Germany sort of equivocation, it's always a very dicey, territory to be in. And so when he just said it so blatantly like that, I was like, oh, this guy is kind of fucking insane. Like for him to make that publicly as a fund manager, manages $2 billion, like just to be so like adamant, as Arnie said, so confident about saying that it's equivalent to Nazis. I felt the same way as Arnie. I was like, okay, so this is like peak madness now in terms of the interpretation of the company, which means the alpha is where all the opportunity is in the misinformation of how people think of this company. And then I also realized if this is the guy who has a majority of influence, I mean, I don't think Arnie and I were as influential as Gerber at the time. I think it was really important for people like us, independent content creators, to fight back against that. And I think that was important because when we posted those videos of saying, hey, here's why this interpretation of Palantir is really stupid, or hey, they don't even sell your data, like that's Facebook, Amazon, and Google, that's not Palantir, like just blatant lies around it. I think that helped people who were buying it at $6 and $8 be like, oh, that guy's just stupid. Like, even though he sounds smart and he has billions of dollars, he is stupid. I think, and my prediction is in the next 5 years, there will not be 1 week that goes by without Bloomberg, CNBC, Yahoo Finance, and Wall Street Journal not mentioning Palantir. Just like now, every week they mention Tesla, pretty much every other day they mention Tesla. I think Palantir will be looked at in a positive light because AI will become real. Palantir will be the core AI SaaS play. NATO and defense spending will become more important. Palantir will play a bigger role there. And I think that means for shareholders, that's really important. People actually care about this company. They're going to care more about the company over the next 5 years as the media keeps covering them. And I think that will have an effect on the stock price and influence new people to get interested about Palantir. It just might take the next 5 years for that to fully play out.
Let me ask you this question. Do you think the media coverage Tesla had helped the business?
I think in the early days, like 2019, 2020, it did. But then Elon got very political after the pandemic. So like 2021-ish. And that's when the media started going against him.
Mm-hmm. So we can even argue that, okay, this is B2C, but there is some impact, like some causation effect between the two. I also think, yes, the overall market has slowed down, but Elon Musk becoming from hero to a controversial hero that speaks too much, makes too much noise and chaos, didn't really help.
Yeah, as in the example here, it's not that Palantir is not like political. They've obviously taken political stance. Karp, the stuff he says on Israel, very explicit about that. It's just that I don't think it's as polarizing. So when Karp says we support Israel, or he says short sellers are high on coke, two controversial statements, but not controversial enough for the media industrial complex to tear you down. But Tesla, that's going against the oil and gas industry, which is funding a lot of the media, and then B, being so explicit for Trump, which is why Peter Thiel, I think, has pulled back on the Palantir stuff, because he knows that when Karp goes to talk to some random dude in Finland and close a $10 million deal, it's really hard when that guy is hearing Thiel and Trump in the news, right? It's just hard politically to get that done. So I think Palantir taking a step back away from the politics stuff, and I don't think they're going to get back into it in the next 5 years as explicitly as Elon is right now. That's probably going to lead to the media not taking them down.
I'm going to say something controversial. I think that Elon Musk political is going to help and is probably helping Tesla sales, because think about it, like he was, when he was only a Democrat, like probably almost every Democrat who wanted a Tesla has had one. And who is the people who don't have Teslas yet? It's the Republicans, you know. And I saw this video about Farzad where he said he was making this analysis that, like, when you're the CEO, you need to appeal to like a new big group of people that don't have your product yet, right? And then when he switched more into the Republican, it's like a group of society that has not been traditionally thinking EVs. And I think that it's going to, because I don't think it's like, I don't think, like, yes, the snowflakes are very loud, and sure, there has been like a lot of people, or, you know, like, let's say if 0.005% decide to not buy a Tesla because of Elon Musk politics, because it's a lot of number, it becomes a lot of people, like, I don't know, 50, 500, 5,000, but it's a very, very small percentage who is extremely loud. But the media doesn't talk about all the people that is more on the right side that decided to look at Tesla because of Elon Musk comments. And I think that there's more of those than the people who ended up not buying Tesla.
Do you think Karp is starting to get appreciated by a bigger sample of people that previously hated him?
Amir?
Well, I was just going to add to the previous that there's a quite stark difference compared to Tesla, where there are a lot of alternatives to Teslas, but Karp has on multiple occasions spoken out like, people don't like me, but you can't afford a PowerPoint when your life is on the line. Like, he is multiple times quoted that people like have a very bad impression of him after meeting him. he might be like polarizing in some people's eyes, in some conservative eyes, and people still realize that we need the outcomes that the solutions provide. We need the edge. We need the numbers, and the impact the software has speaks for itself. I mean, we can all relate to the not PowerPoint, a presentation of businesses that have adopted Palantir and willingly speak like, okay, this is how it impacted our business, all for their competitors to see. I mean, that's quite huge, especially considering that he's quite a polarizing guy. I mean, not maybe quite to the extent that Elon is, especially not as far-reaching, but I think there's a big difference. Like, Vince made a great point about Tesla. I haven't even considered that, like endorsing Trump. I don't believe that it's like strategic by Elon. I do believe that his concerns for the Democratic Party are legitimate, but the effect of that could be very positive for Tesla, as you mentioned. I haven't even considered that vertical of introducing a whole new group of potential buyers.
Maybe we already touched it previously, but very shortly, do you think Palantir has some political risk going into the elections if one party wins over the other, or it is a completely, let's say, bipartisan as theoretically defense should be?
I think Palantir has hedged their bets insanely well, because Karp is an outspoken liberal and Peter Thiel is an outspoken Republican. So you have both, right? And I think that they have been crystal clear and upfront about their values since the beginning. So I think that there's going to be people that they irk on both sides of the aisle, and they're going to find people on both sides of the aisle that really like them. I think they had a very, very smart strategy.
And I think, I believe it was during AIP Con, either the CNBC or Yahoo Finance interview of Karp. I think he was asked this specific question, like, under which political side, like under which president would Palantir do better? And he straight up said, well, we've been in business with the government for over 20 years, and we haven't seen like a material impact regardless of who's been the president, either right or left. And as you mentioned, they're hedging their bets with the two co-founders being like right and left leaning. And in terms of like government like when you're talking military, like DoD, roughly around, if the numbers are still accurate, from 2021, it was estimated that 77% of US government revenue was from the DoD, the defense. They're not gonna care, like they want the best product, like when lives are on the line. They're not gonna care like if you're right or left as a company. They're gonna get the best product, and that's Palantir. So I don't believe we're gonna see negative impact, though I do believe that a Republican Party might benefit Palantir more, but I think they will do fine under both.
I agree. I think that the media proliferation on Palantir is going to be massive. And I think when it becomes massive, like it's already starting to become massive, but like it hasn't hit the S curve of every single day. Like, again, the media companies, they need to get attention. They need to get clicks. They need to talk about stuff people want to talk about. People care about Tesla, Nvidia, Microsoft, Amazon, etc. When people care about Palantir to the level that we already know they care about, because we're seeing it on YouTube and Twitter, when the media really realizes that, they're going to be talking about them every single day. And I think they don't have the political risk that Elon has, because as Arnie said, that when or Amir, as you said, when your life is on the line, you have to go with the right software. If you don't like Tesla, you'll just get a BMW or some other type of EV. And that's very powerful, I think, for Palantir at the end of the day. Matt?
I think, I think you're hitting on something there pretty important there, Amit. I think we only have 20% of hospital beds today, but 5 years, 10 years down the road, it could be over 50%. Warp speed, I think, will impact manufacturing dramatically. In terms of logistics and supply chain, if I think that about the product appropriately, at what point will 50% of warehouses be using that to be able to operate their businesses? So I'm with you. I think right now we've slowly infiltrated, but you think we're still only $2.75 billion this year in potential revenue. At what point, is that in 4 or 5 years time, probably by 2030 timeframe, we'll be a $10 billion a year organization in terms of revenue. We'll be 4 times as large as we are today, or 3 times larger than we are today in terms of, revenue. I'm anticipating that you're going to see numbers like that. If you're controlling 50% of the hospital beds, 50% of the manufacturing operating systems throughout the country, and many other items, I agree with you. I think it'll be a conversation. I'm very bullish that within 10 years time, you'll see massive amounts of attention going towards this company, and wouldn't be surprised if it is compared to, if not stealing market share from a lot of the other tech companies in ways that we haven't even thought up yet, right? I mean, I'm sure Palantir's just beginning. They're still creating new products or releasing brand new ones. I mean, you think about it. This is how interesting this company has been. They really took, in terms of PG, they took, let's just say 15 years, 14 years to really perfect PG. And then they said, you know what, we're going commercial. We finally feel like we know what we're doing. We've unlocked it. We think we kind of know how to go to market. And they said, okay, let's do it. And within 6-7 years, they've actually caught on in terms of traction the way that they have. And they've come out with multiple new products. And with that, every day, they're probably thinking of more to be able to release in the pipeline. I would love to see the year span of between now and 2035 and what products they think they're going to release when for Palantir. And I guarantee there's somebody thinking up some crazy shit over there in Denver with a big ass wall like I have behind me, with 2024 all the way to 2035 spanned behind me, and what products they're going to release when, and what industries they're going to impact. And I don't think people are fully recognizing that. These guys will, in my opinion, go after the Googles, the Microsofts, etc. I just think that we haven't hit a, let's just say, piece of their potential software, or piece of whatever market those guys are going after that truly overlaps at the moment. So I'm curious to see, really, within 5 to 10 years, what additional products have come out. I'm curious to see with more demonstrations and examples as to what warp speed is going to bring, how much that impacts many other folks in industries in the United States, as well as a lot of the other countries that we operate.
If Chad is still around, would you like to hop on if you have time and explain warp speed to us like we're 5?
He's probably not going to hop on today, but they're working on a podcast for that soon. So,
awesome.
Yeah, we'll get more info.
Well, how important do you think is warp speed that Sham mentioned during the call? They seem pretty excited for that. First, if you have to explain it from your understanding in a couple of sentences, what it is and why do you think it could move the needle if?
Well, if we believe American manufacturing is important and that we've had too much manufacturing go off seas, and the Panasonic deal is kind of the perfect embodiment of factories that are digitally native in regards to being more efficient and streamline their operations, then there's a massive opportunity for American manufacturing. So to me, warp speed is just one product inside of one vertical that they've realized is so big, they're turning it into a standalone product along with AIP and Gotham, trying to brand it also as this really big industry they can tackle. And if they're getting the deals that Sham talked about in the earnings call, then we should see a lot more acceleration of American manufacturing.
I think so. If you think about Palantir, you have Foundry, you have Gotham. Those are legit standalone operating systems. You have Apollo, a legit standalone operating system. AIP sits on top of those things. Warp speed is another one of those, right? So when we're talking about these things in the future, when we talk about FedRAMP and we talk about OSDK, those are things that fit within existing operating systems that are already there. This is another column underneath the roof. This thing is going to help support the future growth and be a fundamental piece of going forward. So I'm honestly kind of curious, because I only have experience in Foundry, so it's going to be kind of tough for because I'm kind of curious. It's I don't have any experience in Apollo. I don't have any experience in Gotham. but I can see how something like a warp speed can be organized to completely be different than what I do on a day-to-day basis, because I don't really deal with inventory too much. I deal with data flows more than sort of inventory, but they're different ways of, I guess, data in their own sort of right. But it's interesting enough, and in my opinion, Palantir probably wouldn't put their stamp on it unless they truly thought it could be a multi-billion-dollar business on its own.
We got chatter saying manufacturing, even in new facilities, are highly fragmented among MES, IoT, ERP, PMs. Instead of us just layering on top of those, think about replacing all of them with an integrated system, which sounds like a standalone product that's going to be very, very exciting if they can sell that effectively to the American manufacturing enterprise and replace a lot of stuff.
The way I think about it is like, you probably have GE products, you probably have Samsung products, you probably have all these other random things that communicate in their own sort of way, that distribute data and communicate through different applications. And the thing that I think will be beautiful is if you have all that coming through one succinct sort of way, so that way when you're a floor operator of a warehouse, or you're looking at, a particular machine that goes down, you have the ability to, and the thing that's beautiful, something that we use, and I don't know if I'm saying too much, Chad, but we use something called Apex within UDoc, and that basically is like a train of, and like a model of a 3D model, or I guess an AI model of where the flow systems of our basically process train go. And so if you have a piece of equipment go down, you'll need to figure out a way to bypass that to be able to keep up your manufacturing. And so I anticipate warp speed is going to be something that builds in those sorts of pieces of AI that literally has a 3D or a computerized model of every single one of your pieces of equipment. So if one piece goes down, they know exactly not just a part to replace it, but how to best optimize your production floor, knowing that that piece of equipment is going to be out for a month or 2 months or 3 months, depending on what kind of long lead you need. And so I'm kind of curious to see if that's going to be implemented to it.
All right. We've got one more segment left on the show. First of all, thank you to 600 people being here on a Saturday. I think this is the most we've ever had on a Palantir Weekly. So I think it's ironic. We're talking about media, more people caring. I think everyone, will see that more people care over the next couple of years. We're going to bring on someone on the show that has been a fan of the show, fan of Palantir for a while, and we'll do more of these audience segments in the future to hear from you guys and get your thoughts and opinions on Palantir. Welcome to...
Let me just shout out store.palantir.com before we forget.
Oh yeah, dude. Okay, so I forgot to do that segment, but we'll talk about them more next week.
We get a little commish? No, I'm just kidding.
Palantir launched merch, store.palantir.com. I did a whole video on this with one of the employees a couple days ago, but Iliano launched this, and you can now rep merch.
I saw that you were giving out vouchers for the store, so I've already calculated the impact on the net income for the next quarter.
You might think it's a little expensive, $91, $41 for a shirt. They are selling it at cost. There is no profit from this, and it's made in America, so it is a little bit more expensive to manufacture this stuff, but it's really cool stuff, and you get to rep one of your favorite brands, which is Palantir. Real quick, I mean, let's talk about it for 5 minutes. We got Tomas in the background. I'll get you on in a second, but just to address it, for those that feel buying a shirt from your favorite stock is cringe and wearing it like Amir in his hat right now, Amir, what is your take to people who say that's cringe and that's just a weird thing to do?
I don't understand it at all. Like I've been blocked by this clientele on Twitter, so luckily I've been spared. I've seen a screenshot here or there, and
you mean there's people on Twitter that are dedicating their entire life to tweeting about people having hats from their company and why that's a bad thing? There's people doing that, actually? Really? Well, people are wasting their life doing that? Really?
It's kind of insane to me, especially when you're a fan of the company. Like, how can you find it cringe? And the funny part is I made a tweet recently about how I find the whole aesthetic part of Palantir like really attractive. Like, the logo is cool, the color scheme is cool, like the merch looks good. Like, this is not just like something thrown together haphazardly. Like, this is actually legit stuff, like I would be happy to sport the clothing and the caps and stuff like that. Like
So
I
let
don't
me
get it at
ask
all.
you real quick.
Like,
Someone
what's
who's
the argument? Like, what's their argument? Like,
well,
what's
so let me
cringe stuff?
someone who's dedicating their entire existence to hating on people wearing hats from a stock that they actually care about and a company they care about, and aggressively doing it to the point where it's like becoming a lifestyle for them. What do you think is going in their head internally? Do you think something's wrong in their personal life? Like, why is that happening?
Is this like therapy session, like psychologist? No, I have
just
no
wanna know,
idea.
why are people
Okay.
doing this?
The legit answer I do have is that I'm pretty convinced it's mainly just for attention. Like, what else could it be? Like, they can't genuinely go to bed at night and be like, hats are ruining the company. Like, there's no way. Like, I think it's specifically for attention. They're taking a stance. They're part of the community and they're going against the grain. It's gaining a lot of attention, and I think that they are they are upset about Palantir employees interacting positively with parts of the community, but not them, because perhaps they are a bit polarizing, stuff like that, and then they just feed into that and like raise that as a point. Because I've seen them go at Eliano, like he's doing amazing work for the community, and I think it's simply like feeling left out and just wanting to get attention. Like, this is the only reason I can think of.
Arnie, your thoughts on people saying it's cringe to wear merch?
Well, I'm absolutely aligned with Emir. That seems someone is desperate for attention and trying to, hey, I do exist, so let's take the opposite direction. And it is sad that these people actually come from the community itself. But I can talk more about this kind of not opponent, but like the skeptic. When I posted this, like that the merch store expanded, this guy who's an investor, seasoned person that stayed in the industry for a long time.
I'll read his comment out loud and then you can respond to it. So he says, really, to be honest, the merch store from a SaaS provider resonates like a red flag to me. Maybe I am too old. I always got this kind of merch as an attendee of all the software conferences.
And there is nothing wrong with that, like with being a skeptic. And I can see the angle he comes from, because this guy worked in finance, and we need to think that all finance people tend to have the same kind of mental attitude, because that's the environment where they lived, is an environment where they all think the same. So once you have something that goes out of the ordinary, they lose the ability to actually understand what's really going on. Remember when Palantir was down, like all the not all, but 99% of institutional investors were like, oh, we can't touch it because it's too controversial. We can't touch it because people say it's pie. We can't touch it because it's unprofitable. So it's like the herd mentality in finance is very strong, and they struggle to understand, to accept something that doesn't belong to their own mental framework. And it is true. Like no other SaaS company is really selling hats. But an interesting question could be, what other SaaS companies could actually sell hats well? Because selling hats, everybody can do that. But how many SaaS companies can actually sold out in like literally no time? Like
2 hours.
This morning, well, yesterday morning for me now, I wanted to buy the white t-shirt. Oh, sold out. I wanted to buy the gray t-shirt, VM, still sold out. It's like, wow.
Just to interject, I got reminded of something. Like on my Instagram, I've been getting like ads like Lehman Brothers risk management team and stuff like that. And I was thinking like, well, the other only SaaS company that could sell merch besides Palantir is like CrowdStrike outage.
Well,
no, dude,
Snowflake, we share your data.
Yeah, exactly.
Connecting the world for free.
I think the people that are against the Palantir community, and there's a small minority of them, but for some reason they're very vocal about wearing hats and wearing merch. I think they're so wrong. Like, they will look back on this in 5 years and realize how how ignorant it was to say that if you like a baseball team, as someone said in the chat, or a basketball team, and you want to rep their logo on your shirt, and that just makes you like feel proud because you care about that team. Same thing with a company. Now, I know a lot of people have a more emotional experience with Palantir because there are certain values that bring people together that you might not have about like Microsoft or Amazon, because those are just investments. But for Palantir to ever become a Microsoft or Amazon, Palantir needs to not just feel like an investment that you can sell after you're up 100%. It needs to feel like something you want to be with for the long term, because that's what makes a company and a stock go up. People hold it for 10, 20 years, and you need a cult-like mentality around that, and merchandise only reinforces that. And we have one of the best investor bases on the planet in terms of the retail community. So I think it's a very positive thing, and I think the people yelling are wrong.
It's a culture, right? And I agree with you. I mean, that's one thing that you'll recognize. If these guys ever come to your office to help you build, Palantir Foundry or Gotham or whomever, maybe Warp Speed into your place of business, you'll see and feel that sense of culture. And it's something that I was very impressed by. It wasn't like a superiority complex or anything like that. It's just these guys are different. Like they're built different. And I think that that's something that I align myself with. And I love that strong culture about the company. But it goes back to also, if you think about Tesla, why did Tesla sell fire breathers and whatever?
Blowtorches.
Yeah, blowtorches. And why did they sell tequila? Right. And it's like, what the hell? I mean, if you think about it, it's no different than if you go to Africa, people will put the Toyota symbol on their skin because it's a culture, right? Toyota is a big culture within Africa because of the Land Cruiser, right? So I think you have to think, it might not mean something to somebody, but to somebody else, it's extremely important. And to me, I think Palantir is one of the strongest cultures that I've seen, not only just from a retail shareholder base perspective, but also just within the company. Like I've seen Microsoft people come into the office before. I didn't really get any sort of feel any different type of way. But when these Palantir guys spoke, I listened because of just their presence and who they were. And that's something that I can honestly say I've never really met with a consultant or any sort of engineer that come to help build legacy applications or that we've had within the organization that I've ever felt that way before. And that's one of the reasons why when those guys, I worked with them, the company wasn't even public yet. I was like, as soon as these guys go public, I'm buying stock. And I knew that I was going to buy the company before it even was mentioning going public. And that's the kind of culture that I relate to. So for me to buy a hat, that's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm. And consider, I think Matt said something very interesting. The important thing is this stuff matters to the people that care. They don't need to try to sell hats to everyone. They don't care. They really care that people who care keep caring and they feel involved. And personally, as an investor now for 4 years, I'm proud to share. I'm proud to share, to have the hat expressing a synthesis of my journey as an investor, true, but also all the values that the company represents. Imagine you go out with a snowflake hat. What do you represent? Nothing. Like a crap company is trying to survive. It's you don't want to be associated with that. You want to be associated with something that is cool, that delivers, and protects our right to go around with a hat.
Yeah. You wear a snowflake hat, they might try to get you to go into the bathroom so you can get free or something. Yeah, I don't know.
Just
no shit.
How happy I am that there is really a merch store back. Actually, my wife made this. It was her first, I think, 4x now in a stock, and she made this for me back in the
wow
by hand. So I'm really happy to be sporting Palantir. It has had a positive impact on my life, our life, my wife's. I mean, I ordered everything in the store, both for me and for her. And she's been making my own Palantir gear at home, just out of passion. So that we actually have a store now, I can't see anything negative about it. And I don't understand the trolls in regards to that at all.
One final point on this, and then Vince, I'll get your thoughts on this. This is not like GameStop or AMC where we're coming together and we're getting merch over bullshit. If you wear GameStop merch, it's just pure bullshit you're representing, and that's okay. You might want to represent pure bullshit, but that's what it is. With Palantir, there is so much to discuss. I mean, like the most basic value I think most people care about is protecting the West, caring about freedom, democracy, liberty, civil rights. That is a very cool thing to represent via a logo on a shirt. And so I think when people are getting excited for merch, it's not only because they have a $6 average and now the stock's at 30, which is a hell of a reason to want to be excited about something, but it's because the way they went from 6 to 30 was not by raising $4 billion in cash by diluting shareholders, selling them a dream that they're going to make video games into NFTs, but rather it's by protecting the West and getting major government contracts and actually building a pretty amazing tech company.
Making the Western world a better place.
And makes the world a better place. Vince, your thoughts on this?
I mean, it's merch. Come on, there's always going to be haters. Yeah, I think it's very cool. I like wearing merch. I haven't bought Palantir merch yet because I'm waiting for this special black hoodie that is on the early Palantir employees before I pull the trigger. But I think if you're a good shareholder, you want to promote the company that you have. And, when you wear merch of a company, then some people come and ask you like, what is that, and then it's like an opportunity to speak about your best company. So yeah. I don't see any negative with it, like if you own a company and you don't want to wear their merch, then I don't think you should own that company. That's my opinion. And you're not.
Yeah, like if I wear the hat on a date and she says, "Oh, what's that logo?" we can start talking about my favorite subject, So.
And then if she says, "Oh, that's this evil Nazi company," then you know that you walked on a landmine, and then you.
Well, that's the easiest way for me to know there's no second date.
Well, not only that, but then immediately you could write off the date. So it's perfect it's perfect for everything.
Exactly. I mean, Grindr stock was undervalued, so now I have a logo on my shirt here. You made me some returns.
So that's the goal. Like you wear the hat around New York. And it becomes a test. Like the first goal that recognizes you and the hat is the right one.
I'm marrying her. That's right there. I'm marrying her. She's like, "Oh, is that the ontological data operating system of the modern enterprise?" I'm like, "You're my new wife." That's it. All right, so let's do our final segment. We have a fan joining the show today. Tomas, what's up? You're live.
Hi, Vince, Matt. Congrats on Rocket Lab. Nice meeting you.
Thank you. Nice
Arnie,
meeting you in person, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you've met Arnie before, right?
Yes, in Amsterdam. He came.
Okay, very cool.
Amir, I've chatted with a lot. GoCarp as well. And Amit, I'm a big fan of the channel. Good to see you.
Love it. Awesome.
I wear the hat as well, you see.
Yeah,
but I have one question about wearing the hat. So I'm a university student in Amsterdam.
What are you studying in university?
Economics and business economics.
And you're what, 20 years old, 21?
Yeah, I'm just turned 20. But the question I have, can I rock this in school? And I need to know someone. Amit, I sent you something on Twitter DM. At my school, they lynched the Palantir headquarter building because I didn't even know there was a Palantir headquarters in Amsterdam. But when
did this happen?
Like a month or two ago, and this is supposed to be like blood, and I even went there to video it. I also posted it. But then, can you like wear this in public? Do you think?
So hold on. So just to make clear, you're in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam.
Yes.
People hated Palantir so much. Was this because of the Israel support?
Yes,
like, what is the?
Yes. Yeah, and also like the Skynet, Peter Thiel, angry company. Like 2 months ago, and this is not 2020 or something.
They watched too much Ross Gerbert.
Yeah. No,
well, let's. What is your reaction before we go around the panel? What was your reaction to seeing that as an investor?
Yeah, I have all my life savings. I yeeted that in at $19 a share. All my life savings. So I was like pretty, like not pissed off, but like, how can you do this? Like, this is my company. I personally think they are very good, not evil. But even if they are evil, why this is it's illegal, it's very weird.
Amir, your thoughts on this, and what do you think it means for him wearing the Palantir hat around this area?
I think it's exaggerated. I think most people you meet will have no idea, and it could be a conversation starter. And in terms of I have had a thought, like, because the pro-Palestine protests do get violent all across the globe, and I think extremism, regardless if it's extreme left, extreme right, is never a good thing. And I have had I'm not been scared to wear Palantir, like I'm proud to wear it. But I do believe that it's easy to get lynched if someone recognize it among a violent crowd. But it's like I could get lynched for being mistaken as being Jewish. I don't think a lot of people will recognize the logo. I mean, I associate the Palantir with good values. I associate it with Lord of the Rings. I mean, there's only positive association from my side. And yeah, I mean, it's sad to see that. We know that Palantir headquarters have been protested at throughout history various times. Now more so less, considering that people are actually starting to understand what Palantir does do and doesn't do, as we touched before on the media narrative. So no, I don't think you should be scared. I think it can be a great conversation starter, and I don't think you're in danger. And if you are, just give me a call. I'll fly out. Back up.
Don't wear it to a pro-Palestine.
Yeah, don't do that.
protest.
Don't poke the bear. Yeah, definitely don't do that. Yeah.
And Amir, you need to calculate now the impact on profit margin of cleaning that mess up in Amsterdam.
Yeah, as I saw the picture, I was already in Excel.
But see, none of us knew about that. So I guess the media coverage of that wasn't massive. I'm finding out for the first time today.
Yeah, nobody knows about this company in my home country, so it didn't spread. But I also want to say one thing, guys. So what I learned is that the only way that the economy grows is by either population growth or innovation. And you have the 0 to 1, 2 types of innovation, the new ones or the spreading of the innovation. So Palantir went new, and now they are spreading innovation. So do you guys think that Palantir maybe can have a meaningful impact on economic output for a country as a whole?
Meaning, do you think Palantir can be legitimately increasing the GDP via their products of a nation?
For example, you could see America increasing and Europe staying behind in the coming 10 years. And could you attribute Palantir to that?
Who wants to take a stab at that one?
I mean, I think yes. The debate is like the to which degree, right? Because I'm 100% that Palantir is improving the productivity of a company, and even if you improve the productivity of a company, that they are part of the GDP, and depending on how big that company is, it might be like a 0.0001% improvement. But I think Europe, as a fellow European here, there's 4 Europeans here and only 2 Americans, by the way. But like Europe needs to figure something out, because we don't have population growth and we don't have innovation. And the US, I think, has both. So and we are not so.
We do have goes to America anyway. So
yeah, and I think, Thomas, I think this actually ties in a little bit to your first kind of note about the reason why the headquarters may have been attacked. So I'm not going to get into the pro-Palestine, Israel sort of debate. Kind of leave that for folks that are a lot more into the world politics than I am, because I'm definitely inept when it comes to that. But I think there is an underlying piece of people trying to promote things in a negative light because it is disruptive, and it is actually something that is changing the way that things have been done in the past. And I think there's a lot of opportunity that is being, or a lot of potential being taken away from other folks that were so used to sitting on their laurels and being able to do things the old way. And now you have a company that's forcing folks to innovate and forcing folks to be on top of their game, which is Palantir. And so I think that adds on a little bit to why you meet some skepticism from like the folks in the UK about the NHS deal, other folks in Germany that weren't necessarily for it. I think it shows that there's a different way of doing things, and sometimes change is very scary for people. And with that, I think it ties into your question about, yes, will it help innovate? I definitely think it will. But also I think with that, and I see a lot of people have knee-jerk reactions as well within our own organization when when Palantir came in, but also I think it's a knee-jerk reaction for a lot of people because it is a big change, and it's a new way of thinking. It's a new way of actually interpreting data. It's a new way of actually executing things going forward. And so much of the world was built over the past 150 years, and the technological revolution that we knew, that when you have somebody else coming in that does it better, and it's saying everything you know is wrong, and this is the way that you should do it, because this is starting from the ground up, not starting from the 70s and 80s when a lot of these operating systems and old historic systems were built on computers. This is the way to do it for the modern enterprise and going forward in the 21st century. That's scary to people. And I think that that's a lot of the pushback that we see, addressing the first part of what you asked, but also addressing the second part. I believe it'll have massive implications on innovation, both from a growth perspective as well as a spread perspective.
So, Matt, do you know about this Antonio Linares guy? He says like the way we've been doing capitalism did not change, and we just wrote things on paper, and then we did it digitally, and nothing really changed. And now with the ontology, there's a fundamental change in how capitalism is structured, with the way a business is set up, with the digital twins and the data monitoring, live, robotic. It's a new way of capitalism. Do you think it is that big? Like this is the new way of capitalism, and this is the only way forward?
From my observation, yes. We went from a SCADA system that pulled in a lot of data, and I'm probably using the words inappropriately, but we pulled in a lot of data, but it was so regionalized. And you have to think, UDOC is a $100 billion business plus, and they do hundreds of billions of dollars of revenue per year, and having disparate data systems and disparate ways to interpret data, if you go to a different country, is very impactful. Somebody's going to spend time having to reinterpret how to use the tools. Somebody's going to have to use time how to reinterpret the data. Is it in feet or is it in meters? Is it in Fahrenheit or is it Celsius? The age-old problem of imperial versus the metric system. And that kind of gets eliminated and allows you to kind of just get back to business and actually creating productive pieces of work and actually generating output, rather than kind of having this inefficiency that we've been so used to in capitalism. And it's a step forward from being on pen and paper, to the digital age, which obviously was a step up. But I agree with you, having this universal language is really going to allow us to focus on and get down to what's actually important, rather than these inefficiencies of things getting lost and not organized appropriately. I can't tell you how many hours I've spent, having things stored in an inappropriate folder, and then it gets lost for a couple days, and you find it 3 days later, and well, you already recreated it because you didn't know it was in that folder, right? So, I mean, something as simple as having things organized in the right way, having things objects created on top of data that you can pull in and recognize, and having all your data organized so that you can search it up like it's Google. You go to literally almost like a Google prompt, and you type in, I want this piece of data, and it brings up all the data associated with it. And it does that for your entire organization. The amount of efficiency with that is just astronomical.
Yeah.
Let's get Arnie's take on this idea of a new form of capitalism.
Guys, I just want to say I need to go because the family is waking up. It's been a pleasure. Great meeting you, Thomas.
Thank you.
Thank
See
you,
you,
guys.
Vince. Thank you. Bye.
I think it's very connected to the previous question about Europe, and there are many sub questions related to that. Is does Europe need something like Palantir to catch up? Hell yes. Why? Because Palantir is that component that tries to accelerate your enterprise, to make it better, to make it work, so become more efficient. Once you unlock productivity in a company, you can unlock productivity on N companies. If you unlock productivity on N companies, you're actually moving the GDP of a country, or potentially of a wider region. So the potential is there, because what we have been seeing in hospitals, manufacturing plants, the value proposition is real, but that brings to another question. How much Palantir adoption do you actually need to really move the needle? And that's essentially the $1 trillion question, because if Palantir can actually move the needle in terms of GDP of a country or a region, we're talking of a company that has massive scale. So everything that brings Palantir just one step closer, one additional hospital, one additional client, one additional service they provide, and that actually delivers value, is one little step into that direction of Palantir becoming the operating system for the entire country, modern organization. But at the end of the day, what they really mean is Palantir having such a big impact in the world that makes everything go faster. Don't forget that Palantir comes from the mind of Peter Thiel, who on one side was extremely frustrated realizing that the PayPal algorithm could have potentially understood that something was going to happen, like there was a high risk at a certain level, but the data was not really framed well. So the intelligence completely missed the picture, and we know what happened at 9/11. And on the other side, Thiel, in the recent years, seems very frustrated that the world is not really advancing as he wants. He famously said, "We were promised flying cars, and all we got is 140 characters for Twitter." So that tells you Thiel really cares of the world advancing, and Palantir fits perfectly with this. Now we have the big question mark, how Palantir can actually go there. And I would say with Foundry, all the products they have, they can do that. With AAP and the spiking interest in AI, now they have the opportunity to not only do that, but do at scale, creating a feedback loop that helps them literally trying to reach entire sectors. For instance, Amit shared again the clip of Mount Sinai. That is like one case of potentially many end case in the hospital sectors. We started from 0% a couple of years ago, 5, 10, and now we are more or less of 20% of the US hospitals using Palantir. Imagine this percentage going to 50, potentially, and potentially, I would score potentially, but it's reasonable. Like, if it is so superior, why shouldn't they adopt that? Salesforce, this kind of software is deployed by any software, by any company. So they need to have something like Palantir going forward. Will only be Palantir? Well, that's the monopoly question. And if we achieve these goals while also being the only player in town, that would also mean not only big GDP growth potentially, but also a big buck for us.
Look, I'm not an expert, but I will share my observations in regards to the EU and Europe. And I think Europe's problem is more rooted in regulatory policies. Like, I don't think Palantir alone will allow Europe to catch up to the US, for example. I think it would facilitate growth. And if there's growth, why would a company stay in a highly regulated environment with severe tax implications when they could just move the business to the US, which we have been seeing? Now, however, Palantir might show enough impact within the government side where they adjust regulations in order to allow for Palantir. For example, recently we had the whole debacle surrounding Germany and the Bavaria region where they used Palantir, they lost Palantir and want to get it back and so forth. I mean, we've seen NHS skirt the rules in order to implement Palantir. So that in turn may lead to government bodies waking up, but I think it's a long process. And I think Europe's problems are far deeply rooted than something where Palantir can just swoop in and accelerate GDP and economic growth to match something like the US or even our highly growing Asian countries.
Sorry, and Emir, does the ontology Palantir changes capitalism?
I have no opinion on that. I need to ponder that deep question more before I
If
give an answer.
If it does, Palantir is going to $1 trillion. If it legitimately changes the nature of capitalism in terms of efficiencies within just Europe alone, forget other parts of the world, is going to $1 trillion because it's going to be so valuable. If Europe, I mean, Japan's facing right. The reason Japan has basically 0% interest rates is because they have population decline and they have no innovation. So you need some level of like inflation, and in order to get that, you have to have low interest rates. If that happens to Europe, I don't think it'll get that bad as Japan. But if it does get as bad as Japan, I mean, they're in a very bad situation. So then at that point, you need Palantir. So this is similar with the NHS, right? The NHS saga to me has always been, okay, so socialized healthcare is a very like fairy tale ideal to give everyone healthcare no matter where they come from. And it's something that Europe uniquely believes in. Okay, logically, that's not going to work. Like in a free market society, we've seen more efficient healthcare systems. If you socialize that stuff, you're going to get inefficiencies. You're going to get backlogs. You're going to get wait times. You're going to get people not being able to schedule a meeting with a doctor because doctors only make 50 grand. So a lot of times the incentives just aren't aligned. So in order to resolve the inefficiencies of a socialized system with the ideals of wanting to provide healthcare to everyone in a society, the middle thing that connects both of those ideas is tech, is Palantir, which is why the NHS gave them $500 million. So if I think that is a massive bull case on Palantir in every industry across inefficient countries and societies like Europe when it comes to embracing capitalism, because Palantir, as you said, Tomas, might reinvent the way they even think about capitalism itself.
Maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but is not fundamentally wrong. I think it is more an evolution needed for capitalism to unlock massive efficiency at scale. So you need to have these systems like ontology that represent the truth. Essentially, that the ontology is a digital representation of the truth, and you can't escape from truth.
I mean, sorry, go ahead, Thomas. Go ahead.
But don't you think, Arnie, that the whole cloud and whole companies going online was a major revolution, but it still needed to be done manually, everything, and that this new ChatGPT combined with an ontology makes the cloud that we laid as a Western society, we laid cloud infrastructure for the past 10 years, that only now that will become very useful.
Well, consider
because it was just for storing data, and
yeah, but it's fundamentally the same angle. Has the servers revolutionized capitalism? It is the next step that was required at the time. Has cloud changed capitalism? Yes, it was the required step that made the emergence of all software companies that we know as they are today, because just the cloud becomes a better way to manage these tech infrastructure at scale. They become less complicated to manage if you have them centralized by a few cloud providers, so companies can focus more into their business. And the ontology and AI is just the next layer. So what happens at every time you go into the next layer? You just try to essentially go one step closer into just focus on into what your business really is. So the more you go to the cloud, the more companies can focus into providing healthcare. Okay, great, but then you create all these Frankenstein monster. Okay, again, how you can go back to your core business, which is providing healthcare. Okay, you need to abstract all this complexity, work on the ontology so that you can understand how you can focus into your business better. So in order for capitalism to really work, you need to have people keep focusing into delivering value at business terms and abstracting, so simplifying and substituting everything that just creates that friction toward the goal of each company.
Okay.
I did have a final question for you, Arnie and Ahmed, kind of, building on top of that. You guys have had a unique experience in DC and then coupling that with going to AIPCon and testing out some of the software and things that people in this chat haven't even seen. Did you guys think that was revolutionary from in your perspective? And have you seen anything different that would compete with something like you guys have seen, meaning the VR headset and several of the other things that you had the opportunity to see firsthand? Curious to your thoughts to relay that. Maybe that can help understand, what you guys have been used to from a normal perspective over the past 20 years and what you saw firsthand and what business and capitalism could look like going forward.
Mm-hmm. I can say the VR set is the cool stuff that is great to speak. It is it is an emotion itself, but the true strength of Palantir, from what I see, is what you don't see. It is the engine that I don't know if, sorry, there is noise. Sorry. Okay, so it is the engine that you don't see that actually makes everything seem so simple to use and work. For instance, a simple thing that made me think is how easily then everything is integrated and reacting real time. That seems simple, but having control on what you see and potentially act on it, that to me is wow, because like the experience I had in the industry was in the financial industry, and the financial industry is quite retarded in terms of digital adoption. And like when you think of institutional investors, you think of crazy deep minds having all the most sophisticated software in the world, and that is potentially true for some few companies like Robinhood, Citadel, BlackRock. Okay, those are elite companies, but the average financial industry company is built on Excel. So I was shocked when I entered this fund for my internship, realizing that entire billions funds were managed only in Excel with macro in VBA. I was like, my expectation was there is a platform like Palantir that intrinsically gives you all the all the risk analytics. You press a button, it sends an order. So it was no. Like it was a series of macro done in Excel, and that those Excels were so fragile. So you needed to click, wait a minute to them to open, take all the data from Bloomberg, pray every day that everything is going well. So it was like, are you joking? So even if the financial industry is maybe an extreme into how things can be bad, even at what are considered leading institutions in Italy. So it's not a third world country. Like we're not growing that much, but it's not a third world country. That shocked me and made me realize, okay, the space for a good company that can tackle problem like this and potentially any other problem that is around is massive. Because of the striking reality is I had the experience into working into this fund, into an investment bank, and things were very outdated, very Excel and PowerPoint-like. And the reality is, even if you go outside the financial industry, stuff don't really change. So entire companies are still built into Excel and PowerPoint. And you have people just being the connecting tissue. So you have an ontology on people. So imagine how ineffective it is.
Yeah, as Chad said in the chat, I haven't really tested things in terms of AIP now and build with AIP and like actually building some of my own stuff. But the demos I did see, the big takeaway from that is it wasn't just chat, like chatting with a AI bot and like trying to read from the data. It was much more than that. Me and Artie uniquely saw a lot of real-time stuff. There was a simulation with Taiwan on the VR headset. So it was way beyond just like Salesforce's Einstein AI agent where you're just chatting with a bot and like getting some answers. It was much more sophisticated than that. And that in and of itself showed me that when Palantir's thinking of AI, they're thinking of it as really what Sean pointed out in a keynote he gave 7 months ago. It's a computational infrastructure. That's how you should think of LLMs for your operations and for your data. It is not just a user interface that you chat with to be able to like get results. And from that perspective, I think that's just delivering a lot more value than some of the other data companies that we have. Chad says right here, done right, it's indistinguishable from magic.
Chad, forget about Amit. Please make AIP now available in Sweden, and I promise to build some very important outcomes.
Yeah, I think Amir uniquely with all the financial data you look at, you're gonna make some fun stuff.
I can make huge efficiencies to my workflow, and I think a lot of people would benefit as well. But I can't try. And the thing is, I have very limited coding experience. Like I'm a systems administrator. I write scripts for like PowerShell at work, stuff like that to automate simple things. If I can build on AIP now, then I think anyone can build on AIP now. So I really want to test that theory out. Like we've seen a lot of engineers sit in AIP now and build stuff like that. But if someone like me can actually achieve some outcomes and some efficiencies using AIP now, then I think truly everyone could. So it's a good experiment to have me try to build on AIP now.
So you have the responsibility of moving Sweden.
I'm carrying everything on my shoulders. Yeah.
Thank you, AI Money, for the $5 super chat. Really appreciate it. All right, guys, that's pretty much it. Tomas, thank you. How do you say it? Tomas or Thomas? How do you say it?
Thomas.
Thomas. Okay, I said Tomas. I was trying to be more European. Trying to be more European, but
Arnie says Tomaso.
Okay, perfect. Let me get one last question for you. How do you feel as a young guy investing your life savings at 19? Stocks done well. Okay, so a couple questions for you.
Even more, I borrowed money to.
Oh, okay. You didn't have to say all that. Yeah, Amir is like cringing right now.
Do you want some Buffett quotes about leverage? I can pull them up.
How do you feel about you're 20? I was 20 at one point in my life. Now I'm going to be 27. So I remember being a kid like you. What is it like being in the investment ecosystem? What content do you consume on the daily? Are you seeing yourself differentiated from other 20-year-olds around you? And B, do you have anyone to talk about with Palantir, or is it only just on YouTube and Twitter with the Palantir community?
Well, first of all, you guys are really, if I watch the podcast, it's like you're having a chat with your friends. So now I'm here. That's very nice. I have one friend who I also met online, who's also a Palantir big shareholder. Who is my age, we very much think alike. And so we met up. He lives in Belgium. I live in Holland. We met up in Antwerp. Very nice. And yeah, it's very weird. Nobody's really doing this. I'm also reading a lot of investment books, a lot of business books, you name it, whatever, daily content, live streams, Daily Palantir. I also watch Joseph Carlson, financial education. I'm learning a lot about DCF modeling, those kind of things. Yeah, it's very nice. It's very nice to have people who are like 5 to 10 years older than me, like you guys, who have done what I am doing. So it's like a nice path on my horizon for like fun. These are good guys, you know.
Amir, what were you gonna say?
Go on to be.
I know Amir's gonna say something smart right now. What were you gonna say?
No, I had nothing smart to say, so I muted immediately. I heard 5 to 10 years. I was gonna make a joke, but no, it's.
Tomas, what do you want to do in the when you graduate college?
Yeah, I don't know yet. Maybe 1 year like Arnie, but that's not a long run thing. So maybe creating really something.
Do you want to work like at a bank or something, or at a hedge fund, or
maybe for 1 year, so that you get like drilled as like a military experience. Gotcha. But that's not what I want to do for 20, 30 years. I want to create, you create value, but real product, real, something that you can touch. Even though information is really a product, more like.
Have you ever thought about going into content and like starting your own creation journey?
Yeah, I'm not that comfortable with that, but
there's a lot of different ways. You don't have to be in front of a camera.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I work at the Business News Radio right now as my summer job. This is like the Dutch CNBC. I'm an editor. So
there you go.
Yeah, it's not as nice.
Creating value.
It will be. Yeah, it's really I create and I learn a lot. It's insane. Talking with the hedge fund boys of the Netherlands on the daily, and let me tell you, they have no clue.
Is the content of that company mainly audio or video, or on articles?
Audio and articles. It's literally radio for in the car, and also articles. And we also have a newspaper. but that's not from us, but that's like a joint venture.
Gotcha.
So
Well,
you're getting the basis.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I just want to commend you. I mean, 20 years old, you're getting your feet wet early. I only wish that I'd done the same. I mean, it really took me till I was like 23 to really get where I was and start to get my footing. So, and I think if you stick with it and you learn from the right people, you'll have literally years. Unfortunately for me, I started kind of creating content on YouTube back in like 2017 with respect to finance, and there were so few people. I mean, Graham Stephan had just started out, and you might have had a few others. And I'm trying to remember the other gentleman who no longer really creates videos, who most of this does real estate. But if you learn from the right people, you can shave years off, and those years, can really be beneficial. I can't tell you the hundreds of thousands of dollars I've lost in opportunity cost by trying to teach myself something that I could have learned had I just listened to others earlier in my career.
Yes,
And
I really
so-
want to thank you guys. And I
Yeah.
also want to thank you, Matt, for your Rocket Lab. I took some shares last week because of your videos with Vinci.
I was telling Matt, he was
I
on my
appreciate-
show today. I was like, Matt, you're the cult leader. If people make money on Rocket Lab, they're gonna give you the credit, so you got to embrace it.
I do appreciate that, but it's the people like Chad, that work at Palantir, and it's the people like Peter Beck and the engineers and everybody that really do the hard work, right? I just click a
That's what I
button
mean with
Yeah.
banking. So like
Yeah.
it's like Palantir creates the real value, and then the banks evaluate. It's very good for the capitalistic system that everything is valued properly, but the value you're creating is kind of limited,
Right. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining. This was awesome. Everyone's Twitters are in the description. Please make sure to check them out. Tomas, feel free to join again in the future. And
you, man.
thank you for joining today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good weekend. We'll see you next week.
Cheers all.
Bye.
Nice meeting you, Thomas.
Thank you.
Yep.
Bye.